Hey guys, welcome to the channel. I'm just giving it a fun little idea. Doing homework today, and I get really bored while doing homework, so I do creative stuff while I'm learning actual stuff. I actually find it to be helpful because it allows my brain to actually visualize the content and kind of just weaves the two things together with creativity. What I've been studying was the MCSA textbook. That's what I've been doing this month. I've been focused on the enterprise level of things, just how that all functions, Hyper-V, all that fun stuff. After I feel pretty comfortable with all their features. Microsoft tends to just be really dry with their features, and then it's just a matter of just figuring out how best to implement them into a business sense, or even on a consumer side. It's all very boring and not automated hardly at all. That's one of the things I think drives me nuts the most. Is like they'll explain something to me, and I'll be like, well, why do I have to even understand this? What was one of the really dumb things that I was having to deal with? So there was a feature, I think it was the system preparation tool. I think that's what it was. Yeah, the sysprep feature. They were talking about the Windows activation clock, and it took me a lot longer than I had expected to figure out why that mattered. I still don't fully understand why. Maybe if I was in an actual enterprise environment, maybe it'd make more sense. Maybe there's something with the way the volume licensing works. Anyways, I thought that was weird. Windows system activation clock, what it means is when you do a consumer-based reinstall Windows, usually says in the bottom right-hand corner that this is not a genuine copy, please activate within 30 days. But like it continues to let you use it, and it continues to it'll allow you to activate it at any time. So I guess it just doesn't make sense to me. I probably won't for a while. But it's in the textbook, so you have to memorize it. This textbook's only like 1,000 pages. It's not as bad as some of the other ones. Like the CCNA, I probably spent at least 100 hours on CCNA stuff and understanding it. So the coursework that I got was about 50 or 60 hours, and then I spent another 40 or so just outside of it researching stuff and trying to understand it. Yeah. Anyways, so the fun thing that I was doing today, I work at an Apple store, and they get donations fairly often. Some of them are decent computers, like 2010 iMacs that like nobody wants because the graphics cards are gonna fail, because it's an Apple feature for things to fail. Anyways, so this is a 21 inch, 24 inch. It might be a 24 inch. No, it's definitely a 21 inch. I have another one that's a 27 inch, but I already had this one taken apart. I had literally taken this thing completely apart, just to kind of get a better idea of what we could do to it. One of the common things is to replace the hard drive with an SSD, and also you could replace the DVD drive with an SSD and then keep a regular mechanical drive in here, so you can have a lot of storage. But the stupid thing I was thinking about doing was replacing this whole entire section right here, because this plate right here is right where the Apple logo is normally on the back of the iMac, which has a Wi-Fi antenna attached to it. So I would probably just cut a giant hole right here, and this hole right here is basically the size of a 120 millimeter fan for a computer. So that'd be an interesting way to help the system cool a little bit better. So the nice thing about that is that there's a fan right here that's just a little, like, I think it's an 80 millimeter fan that all it does is it sucks air from the back of the iMac into the iMac for the hard drive to be cooled, because usually a big beefy hard drive, it takes up a lot of space, and it's also in an enclosure like that. They wanted to cool it a little bit better, so that fan right there is dedicated to just that. So you could remove that fan and then provide actual cooling to the actual logic board to help the system, not just have a lot of stagnant heat that's right here, because they really don't have a ton of cooling for the actual board itself. They have a little bit right here, kind of, where this fan is, but it's covered by cables. It's not a very good situation. Same thing with this side. There's a fan right here, so it sucks air from the very bottom through the top of it and then pushes it directly onto here, but there's a rubber gasket that goes along the bottom, so it's completely sealed up. And then this hot air goes into the power supply and then out of the system. So like, you just don't have good cooling. And this fan right here cools the graphics card that's way up here. So what you could easily do is just remove the DVD drive, put an SSD right there, and then I was thinking about moving this fan up right in front of the graphics card. That way I'm getting direct cooling. I'm going to have to do some measurements though to see if this is going to cause conflicts from being up here instead of down here, just because of the height. I might have to get out a Dremel. But I thought it'd be better to have the fan right up against the cooling system up here, because then that will allow more direct cooling for the video card. I couldn't figure out an easy way to fix the cooling, like make the cooling more directly on top of the graphics card. I'd have to create a custom block, which I just don't have the tools for. It'd be an entertaining thing to do though. Pull Linus Tech Tips. However, for the CPU though, I think this might be a standardized cooler, sizing holes at least. So you could remove this giant heatsink right here, and then just bolt an actual heatsink directly to this. It'll do two things. It'll free up this space so like I said, the logic board will have space to cool. And then what I was thinking about doing is on the back side of the CPU, right behind it, there's just a bunch of empty space. You could easily just cut a hole roughly the size of the CPU and just attach like either a CPU cooler if you want to go crazy, or you could just take a cheap water cooler. I know Cooler Masters are only like $70. So you could attach that just bolted direct to the back of this iMac and have a lot more space inside, just to help with airflow and cooling stuff a little bit better and more efficiently. Because with cooling the CPU a little bit more, I think you could get a lot more performance out of it. So that was just a free option that I was just thinking about today, and getting a liquid cooler just to see if it's possible, and maybe one day get a newer model Mac and do those mods to it instead. But yeah, you'd have a fan for the internal coolings to make the system a little bit better, and you'd also have a radiator potentially attached to the back of the iMac, which you're not going to see the back of anyways, and it will free up a lot more space inside so that you can not be as thermally constrained as Apple likes to make things. Even with their MacBooks, you find that a lot of times they have a lot of hotspots, and your computer gets thermally throttled a lot. That's a lot of the reasons why these actually fail is the graphics cards, because like I said, the cooling solution's ridiculous. Like, why would you make the heat pipe this long? Like, I just feel like it's not a very efficient way, unless maybe I'm just not an engineer enough to understand that, but I just feel like that's just a terrible design. You want to have the heatsink as close to it so you can radiate the heat out as quickly as possible, especially with having a fan clear at the bottom. This reminds me of the new MacBook Airs. Yeah, new MacBook Airs, they don't have they have a small little heatsink on top of the CPU, and then the fan's like off to the far right of it, so they're not like connected at all. And so it's just hoping for passive airflow to cool the CPU on those. So, but anyways, I just thought that was a cool idea. I don't know, I might even I might be able to see if I can just mount something on top of the graphics card itself, because it's just a big block basically. I wonder if I could attach some type of water block to it, or maybe a small heat sink to it. I don't know. We'll think about it and play around with some of the numbers. I'm gonna have to do some before testing and after testing with like a Valley or Geekbench or something to see what kind of numbers it gets, and then see what the upgrades, the cooling upgrades do. Because they actually have like a number of temperature probes that like they have one on the DVD drive for some reason, because you know you're gonna be overclocking your DVD drive or overheating it from burning DVD so much. So I might be able to just take that temperature probe and move it to another location on it, and then use that data to kind of get a better idea of how the cooling is affecting things. So that's going to be a fun little project, and you know, putting maybe $100 into something that's old isn't the worst, because I'll always have something else I'm going to be doing projects with. For instance, I got one of these the other day. Yeah, people just donate stuff, and I'm just like, all right, we could sell it, or I'll just take it off your hands for you. This is a little tiny Lenovo tiny PC. It's a M700. These things are great because it's basically like a Mac Mini in terms of size. So it's got, I actually upgraded the RAM on this already. It's got 16 gigs of RAM. Normally it has a hard drive tray right here, but I took that out because I was doing some measurements with the M.2 that I was going to put in here. Because for some reason it has M.2. And I thought this might make a really good media PC. You know, put an M.2 in there. I like doing an M.2 because this has got a interesting design on it as well, where try to think how this works. Yeah, so the top part is flat up against the fan itself. So the top part, the holes up here don't really matter too much, but most of the airflow is actually coming up from underneath it, I think. So it's sucking the air from the front of it, and then sucks the air. So all the components are at least getting some airflow. So by having this giant hole right here, it'll help with the airflow a little bit more. Not a whole lot, but you know, it's nice to have a big metal block on top of your RAM, especially if it's being used a lot. So I thought an M.2 right there would be M.2 right here. Right here would be a perfect way to reduce the amount of components being stacked on top of each other, which would be great. But the thing I like about this one is it's got lots of I/O, USB 3. The only thing I really hate is on the back, they only have DisplayPort. So they have one DisplayPort, two DisplayPort, and a third DisplayPort. I'm just like, why do I only have DisplayPort? Why couldn't you put in an HDMI? Like, this one's actually removable, so I might research and see if this could be swapped out for an HDMI, just to make things easier, so I don't have to have a DisplayPort specific cables. But the other thing that I hate about these PCs, so unlike an Apple, this speaker is garbage. I might actually take some speakers out of like an old MacBook and just lay them on top here, and then upgrade the speakers. So I'll just solder in a new speaker into the wiring, because it's only a positive and negative, so it's not like it's a complex one. So you could just get any MacBook speakers, because MacBook speakers are really known to be good, and I've hacked them before. So that would be a fun project.